Several Russian drones have invaded Polish airspace just a couple hours ago. The Polish military has been mobilized, and there is a shelter in place order for most of eastern Poland on the western Ukrainian border. Now, these Russian Shahed drones aren't mistakenly in Poland like they've been in the past in their attacks on Ukraine. They are deliberately entering and flying in Polish territory, at least the ones that haven't been shot down yet. And remember, Poland is in NATO, meaning they have top tier NATO equipment to handle the Shahed drones. Like the F 16s, they have about 50 of those, and out of the 32 F 35 jets that they've ordered, they've had 6 delivered so far. So, what does Russia's hostile act towards Poland mean? It means that Russia has never been this close to invoking Article 5 of NATO in NATO's history. And Article 5 says that an armed attack against one or more NATO countries is considered to be an attack on all of them, all 32 countries. This breach into Polish airspace is a massive escalation in the conflict, and it means NATO can also match that escalation, and they absolutely should, to show Russia that no, what you did won't be allowed again. At the very least, Poland has every right to do so. And remember, Poland is no slouch when it comes to military power. If you compare the raw numbers, Poland versus Russia, yes, Poland has a much smaller military than Russia, but their military is roughly of the same ranking as Ukraine's. And Russia has been struggling for 3 years to keep the 20 to 25% of Ukrainian territory that actually touches Russia's border. So, two potential Ukraines, in fact, Poland would be more powerful, is more than what Russia could handle. Unlike Ukraine, Poland actually has a decent navy, but they also have one of the largest stocks of self propelled artillery, which is something Russia also prides itself on. But Poland has much more modern gear. And just like Ukraine, Poland is ramping up its drone production with huge investments from the EU to make them one of the top drone producing countries on the continent. And an interesting detail about Poland and drones is that they have become the largest importer of Taiwanese drones within the European Union. And like I mentioned before, Poland does have a formidable air force. It is much more modern than Ukraine or Russia. Remember that while Russia does have a much larger air force than Ukraine and Poland put together, Russia still can't establish air superiority in the country it's currently attacking. And if Russia can't do that against a country with a much less modern air force than Poland, what do you think the Polish Air Force would do to Russian fighter jets? So Poland on its own could severely harm Russia. Poland and Ukraine, then Russia will lose this conflict in a matter of time. But remember, Poland isn't on its own. They are part of a 31-nation alliance. Now, if Russia just did this as a one-time thing to see how much they could get away with pushing NATO, then I don't think it'll happen. But if Russia is actually planning to continue violating Poland's airspace, what is stopping all of NATO from accepting Ukraine into the alliance? Ukraine on its own was holding back the Russian invasion. Ukraine with NATO means Russia gets completely stomped, and this is without the United States. Without America, NATO still has 3 million active troops, while Russia only has 1.1. And remember, Russia is desperately conscripting everyone they possibly can. NATO has twice as many tanks, 3 times as many AFVs, not as much artillery, actually. Russia has more, but NATO has much higher quality. They have twice as many aircraft, just as many fighter jets as Russia. But again, NATO's fighter jets are much more modern and advanced compared to anything Russia really has right now. One thing Russia does have more of, though, are long-range missiles. NATO has 1.5 to 2K. Russia has 4K to 6K. But again, NATO's are much more efficient. But the one advantage Russia has for now against NATO is drone production. They already have the infrastructure in place, and they are producing tens of thousands of drones every single month. Not like Shaheds and massive attack ones, but drones of all kinds. While NATO maybe has 1/10 or maybe 1/5 at best. And while drones have absolutely revolutionized warfare, it takes much more than just drones to determine the course of a war. So why would Russia do something so reckless and risk NATO coming in to stomp on Moscow? It could be a distraction because while Russian drones were in Poland, they started launching cruise missiles into northeastern Ukrainian territory. And remember, Russia has been ramping up drone and missile attacks. Just the other day, they launched the largest one that Ukraine has faced so far, including, 800 pieces of Russian military equipment. This could be Russia's Hail Mary to do some really destructive damage to Ukraine, or maybe Putin will dismiss it as nothing and say Russia can do whatever they want, but he won't do it again. Third option, Putin lost his mind and he wants this to escalate into a broader conflict in Europe. Or, and this is my tinfoil hat, maybe these Russian Shahed drones were fired from Russia, but it wasn't Russians who fired them. And if that's the case, then whoever did that, if I was wearing a hat, I would take it off to you, because you just opened a whole new world of hurt towards Russia. Because this violation of Poland's airspace just brought Poland and Ukraine that much closer, and most likely NATO and Ukraine. The violation of international boundaries like this will look bad even to India, China, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, countries that Russia is pretty friendly with. And if our president doesn't taco like he's been known to do, then it will justify the sanctions he's threatening to put on that country. I am the Geo Husar, and no, I still don't think it's World War III. Thanks for watching.